Greetings and welcome back to another episode of the Aaron Jacobs Podcast. I'm Aaron Jacobs, a former public school band director in the state of Ohio, now turned health coach and teacher wellness advocate. And today we are talking about the busted job market. The common narrative that you'll see amongst people that are seeking jobs, people that want to get out of teaching, the common narrative is no one can find a job and no one can find workers. There's like fake job postings from employers. I mean, right now it's a bit of a mess. But I posted a video on Sunday of this week, and it was just kind of drawing attention to how my content's received on the internet. People love my food videos and my recipe videos. Those are very well received, very enthusiastic. They tend to get a lot of likes, saves, shares, people that are friends or people that I know. I also post some inspirational fitness content that generally gets, well received. The second I post anything for teacher advocacy or claim that teachers have any sort of issues that they need help addressing systemically, there are always people ready to show up and just bring the hate. And so why am I posting the advocacy side of things as a teacher health coach? Some of these things from a policy standpoint, one, need to be discussed openly. And two, people need to understand that the labor market shortage for teachers is a little different than other labor market shortages. I'm going to include nurses in this too, because when it comes to teaching and also nursing, both of those jobs are very high cognitive load, high stress, long hour jobs. The main difference is, though, if you tell someone that you're studying to become a nurse, it's going to be very well received by almost everybody. No one's going to tell you not to become a nurse, except for maybe people that are currently nurses that want to get out of nursing because of the amount of stress that they deal with on the job. But the average person is going to tell you, oh, you want to become a nurse? That's so noble. That's awesome. Good luck. Good for you. We need more nurses. When it comes to other gaps in our labor market, you want to talk things like the skilled trades. If you're coming out of high school and you tell someone, I don't really think a 4-year university is for me. I think I want to become an electrician. I want to become a plumber. Especially nowadays, I think people are a little bit more problem aware that we have a huge lacking in the skilled trade labor market. So I think a lot of people from a public perception standpoint are going to tell you, hey, that's really cool. That's such a great field to get into. There's always going to be a need for that because there's probably not going to be a way that AI is going to be able to assemble pipes for houses anytime soon. There's no way that an AI is going to be able to physically assemble electronic wires anytime soon. That's a very secure job to go into, and there's a lot of high-paying tracks that can come from going into a skilled trade like that. We do also have a shortage of aviation workers like air traffic controllers and pilots. It seems like the only job sector that is also experiencing labor shortage, but also comes with the people entering that field having a cultural perception that is deemed to be less than is the education field, and specifically K-12 teaching. So when I do the advocacy content, it's not because other fields aren't valuable compared to others. It's not because other fields aren't having problems. It's just that K-12 education has this unique issue where the public perception of the typical person in a K-12 education, there are just way more people that don't like you if you're a public school teacher versus any other labor market that's experiencing a shortage right now. So it's a public perception issue combined with a lack of people wanting to go into that field. And what's really interesting is out of all the fields I just mentioned, teaching is the only one where we have plenty of qualified or overqualified people that could do the job but don't want to do the job. Since COVID, according to the NEA, we have over 500,000 fewer teachers and education staff in the public schools. They estimate it to be closer to 600,000. That's a little over half teachers and a little over other educational staff, to be fair. But still, that's a lot. In terms of what I've been able to come across in my research, that is the largest number of any labor sector in terms of an exodus from the profession of qualified people within that profession. Nurses have certainly also experienced an exodus, and I don't blame them for having exhaustion from the COVID times, but their number was estimated from my research again, and if anybody has any other numbers, feel free to tell me, but was estimated to be closer to 100,000. Still not great because we need our nurses, but the other difference there, nurses have many high-paying career tracks that they can work towards. Teaching has this unique combination of lack of societal appreciation by many people in terms of cultural perception, combined with a labor shortage in the market, combined with the amount of people leaving the field who are actually qualified to do the job currently that could solve that stopgap where schools are having issues filling all their positions. But I did want to go through the status of the labor market, because despite all that, the purpose of today's episode is twofold. One is to highlight the unique position of the teachers in the labor market shortage versus other sectors. And two, what is actually causing this labor market shortage? Because I've suspected for a while that with how fast things change, not everything is necessarily due to an employer being greedy or an employer posting fake positions, which I'm sure there's plenty of that going around. But as I've dug into this topic, it seems like there is definitely more of a mismatch between the workers available and the skills they have versus what employers need. So in the instance of teachers and nurses, this is one where it's a high demanding job and many people are leaving. Working conditions deteriorating, making the jobs more stressful. Teachers in particular are paid lower and feel overworked and underpaid. And nurses, quite frankly, to be fair, may also feel the same way too, which of course can take a toll on your mental health and potentially your physical health. And this is why I talk about these teacher advocacy things, because I don't think people have made the connection between all of these co-factors in the teacher labor market shortage and what we have to do to strengthen education in America. So again, just doing my part here to just create problem awareness. And it is really tricky because when it comes to creating short form content, it is very challenging to create a piece of short form content that's going to be giving a complete argument. It's very difficult to do that. So rather, my goal with short form content is to just be thought provoking. And in some cases, it's going to be a little controversial. In some cases, it's going to seem like a stupid thing or an incomplete thought. And I'm okay with that because ultimately, I want to get more people talking about this issue. If we're ever going to help solve the crisis of teachers leaving the profession in the rates that they are, versus every other labor market shortage we have going on in America. When it comes to other things like skilled trades, aviation, IT, cybersecurity, all those things have a skills gap. Skilled trades require very specific education in their field, and this is why I'm actually a big proponent of paring down general education requirements and streamlining the process for every degree out there to reduce the cost and the time in universities to help close these labor gaps. Now, in an ideal world, do I want to cut a bunch of general education requirements? Probably not, because they are nice for broadening your horizons and broadening your perspective on the world. And sometimes people will take a general education class in their undergraduate and they'll decide to switch majors because they find a new interest that they start driving towards. And that's fine. But right now, while we have all these skills gaps and labor shortages, in the short term, I do see some benefit to paring down general education requirements, to cut back on the personal debt taken on, and to cut down the time in which people are in university to go from graduation of high school into the job market to close these gaps. Aviation does require years of training and the workforce aging out, just like a lot of workforces. There aren't really enough pilots and people coming through to replace them. And part of it is too, if you want to have that like stable at-home lifestyle, you want to be home for dinner. If you love to travel, that's great. I kind of understand why that one can be a real challenge, but also the pay you get for that job is way better than teaching, obviously. Which, frankly, to be fair, I think if you're an airline pilot or doing air traffic control when it comes to people's overall safety, I do think that those kind of jobs should definitely be paid more than teachers. That is incredibly fair. Here's the other thing too. A lot of people have these inflated perceptions of what job they can get. I've talked about this in a previous episode. I see all of this desire for remote work. And I've pointed to this is literally just a symptom of teachers are overstimulated socially in their day-to-day jobs. So they want to go from a 10 to a 0. And what you think you want out of that remote job is not what you want. Like, let me give you an example right now. Yes. Do I do my fitness stuff for my clients remotely? Yes, but I also coach part-time in person at my CrossFit gym. What that does do for me is it gives me a social way to interact with people. And so as someone who's now gone from 10 to 0, teachers, I can tell you, you probably don't want that. Some of you might need that for certain reasons, but going right into the remote labor market without having to upskill at all is just so unrealistic. And I'm frankly kind of a little tired of seeing the amount of people complain about, I can't find another job and they're not willing to upskill. If you are a teacher seeking to leave the teaching profession, there are so many labor markets that need your services, but you have to be willing to upskill. I just named a bunch here. And yes, is the time and training expensive? Yes, but is the pay on the back end going to be really good? Oh yeah, it's going to be way better than teaching for just about everything I've named here. But you can't just expect to realistically in this labor market fall right out of teaching into a remote role with your favorite company right away. I just see a lot of unrealistic expectations. So it's not necessarily that, yes, corporations are doing this and that. We can always default to blaming corporate greed. But the problem with that is that it takes away the individual agency of the person to take it upon themselves to skill up and do what needs to be done. And as someone who coaches fitness, someone who is holding myself and my clients personally accountable for their nutrition habits and their movement habits, the idea that we can just abdicate all the responsibility of a major job change to something else or something that is out of our control personally is not a great mindset for making a major life change and building the life that you want to build. Just to give you an idea of some numbers here, let's talk about the numbers of unfilled positions nationwide. The current shortage estimates that between 50 to 100,000 unfilled teaching positions exist nationwide. And with the amount of teachers that have left and people that have left the education profession, why do those things mismatch? School districts have likely had to pare down their services, getting rid of some programs and classes, and also having larger class sizes to account for the fact that there are fewer teachers seeking jobs. So yes, you can have 300,000 teachers leave and only demand 100,000 positions right now because you're paring back your services, which means you pare back the quality of your education for those kids. I will say, though, that there are other sectors of the economy that need a little bit more help in terms of numbers right now. Registered nurses. Projections suggest a shortage ranging from 200,000 to close to 500,000 RNs for direct patient care in 2025, which is a 10 to 20% gap, and that's according to the HCI Innovation Group. And for LPNs, there's a projected 7% shortage, with approximately just under 50,000 unfilled positions by 2026, according to nightingale.edu. In construction, according to an article from ABC, there's an estimated 440,000 new workers in 2025 that are expected to be needed to meet anticipated demand. When it comes to manufacturing in the US, over 22% of manufacturing facilities are operating below capacity due to unfilled positions, leading to inefficiencies and thus higher production costs, which means higher costs for us. There's a fairly large HVAC tech shortage as well. About 110,000 HVAC positions are currently unfilled. There's a projected workforce shortage in this sector over the next 5 years by close to 250,000. And even something like shipbuilding, which the Navy in particular needs nuclear submarines built. So between welders and everything that goes into building ships and submarines, there's a 20% annual attrition rate, which leads to projection delays and budget overruns. When it comes to air traffic controllers, there's a shortfall of about 3,500 air traffic controllers, which may not seem like a lot compared to the other industries, but if you think about the amount of airports we have in this country, that does seem like a big number to me. There's also a significant pilot shortage with thousands of pilots unfilled, which, hey, when you get a flight delayed, rescheduled, it's a problem. But again, I want to reiterate, for teachers, that number being a little bit lower than some of those other industries, I think is skewed because school districts have been forced to cut and pare back their services to students in order to meet the lack of teachers coming in and their budget cuts as well. Not to mention, anybody that goes into any other job I mentioned besides teaching is going to be publicly viewed as someone who's doing a great job and making a great choice for their life. We need to definitely work on fixing those teacher and nursing shortages by attacking the working conditions and making those work conditions less stressful. Nursing and teaching need that help. And my general advice for teachers looking to leave their job and do something else, start thinking about upskilling right now. If there's another field you want to get into, stop expecting someone else to give you a handout and look to upskill. So while the US labor market is pretty weird right now, and it's very tough out there if you're a job seeker in many cases, it's not necessarily a bad job market as the blanket term might suggest. There's a skills and labor mismatch. So what you can do is be the exception and not the rule. Be above average, build new skills, get new certifications, do what you have to do. Use your current job, if that's teaching or something else, to fund your ability to upskill and shift industries if that's what you truly desire. And I can tell you, as someone who's currently doing that, I've never been happier in my adult life. Thank you all very much for listening today to the Aaron Jacobs Podcast, where we broke down the problems in the U.S. labor market, took an overview of where the problems exist, why those gaps exist, and maybe what we can do about it. Everyone take care and be well.